Hi everyone, welcome back to DreamForge, where we talk about writing, futurism, and the strange and wonderful creatures we call humanity. I'm Scott Knoll, and today we're going to meet Simon Foster, the festival director of the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival. As you'll see, DreamForge has many wonderful ties to Australia, where fandom is vibrant and Simon's festival continues to grow by leaps and bounds. As always, you're going to find links in the description, and we're going to start by taking a look at the latest trailer from the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, and then we're going to talk to Simon. So let's go. There we go. Okay. Simon, welcome. Welcome to DreamForge.
It's such a joy to be here, and thank you so much for doing this. I'm a big fan, and it means a lot to be on the show.
Well, you are the festival director for the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival this month, and this is Australia's leading celebration of science fiction and fantasy cinema. So we really want to hear all about that. It's great. One of the things I want to point out to listeners who may not know is DreamForge has a pretty strong Australian connection, stronger even than I imagined when I started. But our first line readers who help us read the stories and evaluate stories that are submitted, we have 3 Australians in that group. So that makes up probably at least a third of our first line readers in any particular period. Even more than that, we have our 2 editorial assistants that have stepped up to really help us be as editorial assistants in helping keep the first line readers on track and in helping keep things going, are both Australian, and they've both contributed stories to DreamForge, and that's Henry Gasco and Jamie D. Monroe. And we've also published a story from a Writers of the Future winner and one of my friends in Australia. His name is James Viren. And so, there's at least 5, 6 or more, Australians associated with DreamForge. And it must be because there's really a passion for science fiction and fantasy down under. And you guys reach out around the world and even make contact with a little magazine like ours. So I think that's great.
Look, that passion for science fiction down here in Australia is exactly what we've tried to tap into with the festival. I've come from a background in a lot of different genre film festivals, but there was none that was really serving that passionate sort of fan base for speculative storytelling that I'm a huge fan of, and the fact that this is only our second year and we've been able to expand Australia-wide with our online festival, and our film submissions this year went from 70 last year to 230 this year, so like a 300% increase. So it's, there is a huge fan base for science fiction culture and storytelling of all kinds here in Australia.
That's really great. Now I see that there is both a national virtual festival, which is November 4th to the 25th, and an event at the Actors Centre Australia, November 11th to the 14th. So do you want to explain to folks, like, what is the difference and the purpose of those, and how do they relate?
We started 2021 by expanding our program. We went from a 4-day festival last year to a 10-day festival this year. Then COVID hit and suddenly the whole landscape changed, and we didn't know what was going to happen. So we've actually brought the festival back down to the original format of 4 days, the live festival. But because we had all this surge in submissions, we had to embrace the online festival experience to make sure we could represent all these filmmakers to the Australian audience. All the filmmakers had put a lot of faith in us. We wanted to sort of extend that faith back to them and out into the Australian sci-fi culture. So Last year saw a lot of festivals become what they call hybrid festivals, these live and virtual events. And so we decided to give that a shot. And anybody who knows me knows I know absolutely nothing about technology. So trying to put together an online event was great fun. And I've got a terrific team around me who helped me do that. And the other important thing was we had to maintain the integrity of the live event. So there is a handful of films that are showing at Leichhardt at the Actors Centre, which won't be available to New South Wales audience, to the state audience, but will go out Australia-wide. So we wanted people to still come to the live event. So it's been a bit of a balancing act, and I'm not ashamed to admit that we made a few decisions on the fly just to for the hope, taking the leap of faith, hoping that it would work. But it's come together pretty well.
Well, everybody who gets something done just takes a risk and gets it done. So, you know, you stand up and somebody's going to complain about something. You always know that that's going to happen. But it's just an amazing thing that you've put together so much, and that this is only your second year and you've got like 200 entries and that sort of thing. One of the things I see just like on the technical stuff, I see that the event, I believe even the virtual event is like geo-blocked to Australia, states and territories.
Yep.
And that you're working with a company actually from the States, which is called Zerb, which is a streaming service, which also seems very new. And I'm really interested in getting into that and learning more about that. Tell us how that relationship developed and how things are working there.
We have strong ties to the Berlin Sci-Fi Fest, and they used Zerb for an online program they did earlier in the year. So the festival directors in Berlin sort of guided me towards Zerb. And you're right, they're a young startup company, very passionate, very committed to service and helping, you know, festivals all around the world, big or small, get their festivals online and to a bigger audience. We had to teach them a little bit about what it meant to geo-block in Australia, because the festival circuit around the world is, you know, doing it so tough, and you've got to respect borders to a certain extent as a festival director. So we brought a lot of films into Australia on the promise that it will be a vast Australian audience that gets to see your movie, but we won't sort of cut into any other markets around the world. So that's why geo-blocking is really important to the festival experience. And yeah, and Zerb were terrific. They've got a great system that allowed even a Luddite like me to be able to upload films and get everything done in a matter of days. And so far, we've put a free film out there at the moment just to sort of test the waters and test the Zerb thing. It's called Aliens on Halloween. It's made by a guy called Riker Lynch out of LA, and he's it's like a 50-minute mini feature, and it's been very popular and shows that Zerb has worked without flaws. So yeah, we're really happy with the partnership.
Yeah, they seem to be doing very interesting things. You're talking about the help that they're giving to festivals, but it also seems to be that they're creating a streaming service that is for creators, people who are making films, documentaries, just creative, you know, vlogs maybe. But they seem to be out there doing that with various channels and helping creators get seen, and then also be compensated for their work as well. So there's a model for that. So it's very interesting. They seem to be, I think they're located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the interesting thing that I find there is New Mexico around that area seems to also be a very passionate area. A lot of science fiction writers are out there. One of our friends, Jane Linskold, who's a novelist, is a science fiction fantasy novelist, is from that area. And they have Bubonicon down there, which we've attended. So it's very interesting that these kind of little hotbeds of science fiction all around the world, from Australia to Berlin to New Mexico, sort of get together and kind of help one another and develop technologies and develop systems to help, you know, spread the passion.
Yeah, Eric Strieper, the CEO there at Zerb, as soon as he sort of saw we were a genre festival and we were sort of working in the sci-fi realm, he was energized straight away. He's a huge fan of the culture and couldn't wait to make the connection with Sydney. And we were fortunate in that the other festival, a Night of Horror Film Festival down here in Sydney, they had to go online entirely because of the COVID shutdown. And they were able to sort of adapt with Zerb as well. And all of a sudden, Zerb's everywhere down here in Australia. So yeah, it's really exciting.
So tell me about some of the things that you just think from your festival that are exciting this year. Talk about films, events you're going to have. It's like what do you see happening at the Sydney Science Fiction and Fantasy Film Festival that you're just really excited about and want to tell people about?
I think what I'm most excited about is the sense of community that we've managed to engender down here in Australia. Part of the reason I didn't have any kind of qualms or any sort of worries about going out to a national audience was that we got a lot of feedback from interstate about when we're going to travel with the festival. So I know there's a real hunger for science fiction storytelling down here in Australia, for film storytelling. And that I hope will sort of, and the ticket sales have been very strong already a week out from the launch of the live event, and we're about to launch the online event down here in Australia. So the community's coming out, and that's a huge plus. The other really interesting thing is that there is sort of and you may have experienced this as well, but there's a science fiction still has that sort of tag about it. People who don't know science fiction know that it, or think that it's all ray guns and spaceships and little green men, and we certainly have some of those in the festival. It is that as well, but we're a truly international film festival in that we've sourced films from 23 different countries. We have 21 features and upwards of 98 short films showing as part of the festival. So there's all sorts of science fiction storytelling and speculative cinema storytelling that we hope will sort of bring in a very broad audience. The pick of them are things like Glass House, which is a feature which has come from South Africa. A young woman director named Kelsey Egan has made her feature film debut with this, and it's remember the old Clint Eastwood film The Beguiled, which was remade a couple of years ago actually with Nicole Kidman, but it's about a sort of a tight-knit women's community that welcomes in this stranger, and this one's put a pandemic spin on the whole thing. There's an airborne contagion that fries your brain if you take a deep breath, and he has to run inside, and suddenly he's part of their group, and it's a really sort of interesting look at a dystopic future. We've also got our opening night film is a US independent film called The Blazing World, which has just opened in US cinemas. It was a Sundance film, and I know there's going to be people that hate it because it's a very strange film. I would rather have people, I know there's going to be those that think that was the most amazing opening night film I've ever seen, and there'll be those coming out and they'll be saying, why the heck did he program that? So it's a unusual film about a woman dealing with grief who goes into her own fantasy world, like an Alice in Wonderland with a PTSD spin on it. So it's a very strange film, but one I wanted to give the sort of film that I wanted to program to create discussion. It's an unusual film. And then we've got an Australian film called Wormwood Apocalypse, which is the sequel to a blockbuster zombie film that came out a couple of years ago that was actually the focus of a whole lot of piracy issues down here in Australia, and the young director really sort of suffered badly because of the piracy thing, but he's been given the money to make this much bigger, much bloodier, much more exciting sort of sequel film, and we're always about supporting not only international filmmakers but of course Australians as well.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a movie that I'd love. I love zombie and apocalyptic movies and books, that sort of thing. One of the things people don't often realize when they learn about DreamForge, because we're based in essentially hopeful fiction and not utopian, but basically where humanity, the human adventure is just beginning, and we're always going to be able to overcome our challenges. And people don't often realize that. Just personally, I like that sort of thing. I like horror. I like apocalypse, dystopian type things. I just founded DreamForge on the notion that that's very much fun, but it seemed to me that it was becoming a little too dominant in the culture, where people were actually just beginning to believe it's like, oh, life is hopeless and we're all going down the drain. So I wanted to restore some balance to that idea of that's fun, but let's also talk about everything that humanity can do to move forward and to survive, and even if there is an apocalypse, to do more than just crawl out of the rubble. So
well, that's really fascinating, because I support what DreamForge does, because in a lot of my programming, we have a film that's a sort of Chilean Italian co-production called Vera di Verdad, and it's the story of sort of soul transference. A young woman goes missing and her soul is transferred to this elderly South American man, and then 20 years later she returns miraculously, and they have to sort of connect to share the soul. And it is and it said to me, sort of spoke to me, is about how beautiful and how hopeful science fiction storytelling can be. And so in that regard, I fully support the stance you take with DreamForge, because it's something that the world needs more of.
Now, another one I saw on your site was, it looked like perhaps a documentary, but it was about Gerard K. O'Neill, and I think it's called The High Frontier. And that's of interest to me, because again, that brings out that idea of what's next for humanity. And for those who don't know, Gerard K. O'Neill was one of the first proponents of essentially Lagrange point stations, basically building small worlds, that basically would include communities, farms, agriculture, so you're not talking about a cramped space station, you're talking about a huge object in a stable orbit, between the Earth and the Moon, that basically uses light to power itself, and is a very large engineering project, but one that I think humanity is capable of. So can you tell us a little bit about that film?
Yeah, that's one of our virtual exclusives that's playing out as part of our online festival, and it's I knew the name Gerard K. O'Neill by reputation, of course, by legend, I guess you could say, but I didn't know the extent of how his visions have impacted people throughout the space industry and throughout science fiction culture ever since he wrote that landmark book, The High Frontier, I think back in the, I want to say early 70s. And this is a film that it was submitted online, and I thought I saw a documentary, and I kind of, okay, I'm not against sort of documentaries as being part of the science fiction festival, but we hadn't programmed a lot up to that point. And then when I watched it, I was just amazed at this man's vision, and how that vision is brought to the screen by this team of filmmakers. The impact that O'Neill had on, at this stage, at least 2 generations of visionaries and those that want to be inspired by what's out in space is just remarkable. And how it's presented in this film, I found to be just a really inspiring and really sort of fascinating insight into that combination of hope and sort of inspiration for an outer space life, and the extent is probably what I'm trying to. The expansiveness of his vision is just something that maybe we're only just seeing being touched on today with some of the explorers going back into space.
Yeah, if you're anyone who's paying attention to all the things that are happening with SpaceX and Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, really the march into space has just begun again, and it's all going to be commercial and driven by commercial interests rather than national interests. So that's all going to be interesting, as I think the next thing we're going to see is probably like a space hotel. So one of the things that I would like to see, if writers could, as they move forward, just subvert the zeitgeist, in that they can do all the apocalyptic stuff and have it on Earth, and then all the exciting stuff where we're doing adventure in space.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And just beat that message into the next generation. It's like, you want to do something really cool, let's get the rockets moving. It's if you want to be involved in endless pandemics, you can stay down here.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way we're headed, I think. And the vision of what he sort of brought to these space stations, as you were saying, they're not just sort of like International Space Station type of things that we've got now. They're vast sort of internal cities with fields of crops and small communities sort of springing up everywhere. It's an amazing world that's represented in the film.
So what has been keeping you up late? What challenges have you been dealing with that you're just going into this? I mean, this is only days away. So what is the big challenges over the next few days?
Getting the online festival together, that sort of happened a couple of weeks ago. So it's really just been sort of getting in touch with good people like yourself to do promotion work for the festivals. The other side of thing is this technical side, and I hope this isn't too boring, but there's a thing called a DCP, and a DCP is a hard drive containing a film that in the old days you'd sort of walk up with giant cans of reels of film and drop them off at the projection booth. Now you've got to work with these DCPs, and getting them from all over the world is just every film festival director's nightmare. So that's been a big part of what we've been doing the last few days. I think now we're just in this holding pattern a little bit, talking to, doing promotion for the festival, getting the filmmakers involved. Part of that sort of sense of community that what the festival is bringing filmmakers together, having filmmakers talk to filmmakers, having journalists get in touch with, cinema types that they may not otherwise get in touch with, and just sort of building a momentum towards the opening, because we've been working on this since January last year. And then in the middle of the whole thing, our big capital city festival, the Sydney Film Festival, decided to up their dates, move it a few months down and drop it right on top of our dates because of COVID. I can't begrudge them doing it, but I sort of woke up one morning and there was the news that Sydney had done that. So I thought, oh, okay, we're gonna have to deal with that now. So we're sort of fighting for the same media space. We're not really fighting for the same audience, but I do have this international flavor to my festival that is sort of in competition with Sydney. So we're working with that. And it's just sort of getting the news out there as to how important speculative cinema and science fiction of all kinds is to, that sort of storytelling is to modern culture.
We're certainly happy to help you get that message out. And you've been in this like for a couple of years now, but and you're right in the thick of just getting things going this week. But what are your plans for the years ahead? Like where do you hope things will go for the festival, and what would you like to see it progress into?
We want to take the brand first of all nationally. So we want to turn the online festival that is going into all the other capital cities and all the other states. We want to turn that into a live event. So we have a roadshow type format that goes to Brisbane and Adelaide and Perth and Melbourne. So we're able to show some of these amazing films in cinemas in those cities. As I mentioned, the tie we have with Berlin, I want to extend that so that the brand goes out to all other sort of science fiction festivals around the world, and we make that connection. Once again, that community is really important. It serves us in that it gets a whole lot of filmmakers from around the world to submit their films to us. Plus, it helps us transport Australian films to other cultures as well. So there's this give and take that we're trying to establish. And just to sort of reinvigorate, help the resurgence, excuse me, of different types of storytelling to make it out into the wider community, the wider culture. And so we've got plans for world domination. How more sort of dystopian science fiction is that?
Well, that's great. And we're really glad you were able to come talk with us this morning, or for you, it's this morning. For our listeners, Simon was really gracious in talking to us today because he just got up.
Can you tell by the croaky throat and the bags under the eyes?
So I really appreciate the time, and we promised we'd only take about 20 minutes of your time, and we're about there. But this was really great, and we hope to pass on the news of what's going on with the Sydney Science Fiction and Fantasy Film Festival, and we're going to look back on you, each year and see how things are progressing. And we hope to have you back with us at some point, and maybe plan an interview where we could actually talk about our views of science fiction and how we got into loving science fiction and that sort of thing. Maybe we can do that one day.
That would be wonderful, Scott. Thank you so much, mate, and thank you to DreamForge for having us on the show. And maybe we'll come to Pennsylvania sometime soon. Do a Sydney sci-fi roadshow into Pennsylvania.
We would love it. All right. Thank you, Simon. You have a good rest of the day. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.